Hi and welcome to our Unlock Genius call. Today we're speaking about health and intimacy. It's an informal conversation. We just closed the whole container with several of you. So we have been there in the deeper waters. So this is a little bit more of a light conversation. I would say that it can go a little bit more serious in the sense that, for example, when we look at hormones and different imbalances that we can have that actually completely can turn off our libido, our way of even wanting to be sexual or wanting to be intimate. So that's definitely a path we can go down. And as always, this call is sponsored by Purium, which means that there are products that are helping, for example, the hormonal balance in Purium, but also just supporting our well-being, our health. So if there are questions about that, you can always ask me or ask John as well. I'm going to start with just a slide because I just love those slides. And this is part of something Ash and I did called, I think it was Sexuality and the Sacral Archetypes or something like that. And I just like this. So this is one way of looking at sexuality in the wheel and looking at sexuality in the body graph. So here you have the different channels that go from the solar plexus center. So from a traditional human design way of seeing it, without emotions, there is no sexuality because sexuality is driven by emotion. However, we have one channel that's connected to the sacral center, which is life force. And when we have emotion and then the sacral energy, that's the channel of mating. So that's when the emotion can go into actually creating a baby. Life force and emotion meet, and we're creating from that place. What I am wanting to add, which is also something that Ross spoke about, but he didn't actually speak about as the sexual channels. I want to include, we have here, just so we see the different types. So we have the channel of mating, like I said, then we have the tribal ego sex that goes from the ego to the emotional center. And then we have the individual emotional sex that you see the green here, individual circuitry. Then we have the collective Kundalini sex. I think this can be a little bit misunderstood what Kundalini is. We can speak more about that, but this is a stream of excitement, and that's what you have here in the blue. And like I said, I would like to add the tantric devotional sex. We speak about those as tantric channels in human design, but I would also say that they have to do with how we are waking up to more of what's possible in the realm of intimacy, of sexuality. And that's devotional. It doesn't really even have to be the thing here where the body and the emotions comes together. It can be much more subtle and energetic. And with that, I also just want to show you this. So here you have those channels. Here you have 515, 214, 4629. And then the way from the library that we are have the 64 doors that we also created with Ashley, you have the graphic of those. So here we have the collective channel of rhythm with the wild woman or the wild man and the drummer or the rhythmic. And then we have the feminine in the second gene key and the powerhouse in the 14. And that's this connection that's individual, that's tantric, that's pulsating, that's create mutation, because mutation is always individual. And then we have the sensing circuit, also collective, with the 46 and the 29, where we have the water goddess and the central. And of course, it can be portrayed in many different ways, and not only feminine archetypes. But there's just something with the beauty of this devotional intimacy that has a feminine quality in some way. It has this more soft. It's not just over with in a way. It's about sensing the energy and the pleasure and the intimacy. So that's a little bit of inspiration for where we can go today. But like I said, also the health aspect in this, both what sex and intimacy is actually doing for health, or what happens when we're not feeling good and that becomes a part of life that's not there anymore. I also would mention the 6 line, or not the 6 line, I would mention the the attraction sphere and the sacral center. That was part of that presentation too, where we can look at the line of the attraction and I guess the resignation or the distraction. I'm a 6 line, so there can be a resignation when I can't have that emotional, then I'm out, I'm not even interested. Or the distraction that can happen also in some of the more individual lines where we're not able to take in the other or change our perspective. So yeah, the floor is open.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name's Elliot. I got notified about this meeting, and I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. I've been experimenting with and applying human design for like 12 years, just like personally in my own experience. And yeah, kind of based on what you're sharing here, seems to me like a lot of sexual experience stuff that is correct is like cyclical, kind of based on whatever is going on in the cosmos, unless you have certain connections with somebody on a regular basis. But sometimes it seems like if you do, or if you have too many, it could be too much. It could be overwhelming. And I've had that before in previous relationships. And I noticed my phone's not charging. Hold on just one sec. And I'm just noticing, like in my current relationship, we only have one connection channel that is the channel of curiosity, and it's been a really strange relationship in regards to intimacy. I don't really know what to make of it. It seems like a lot of energy that has nowhere to go, and you know, we've even tried to break up like many times, but I don't know, maybe because we have so many compromise channels, there's something to learn here. Also interesting, like she has a open emotional center and I have an open crown. Okay, so she has an open ajna and an open emotional center, and I have an open crown. And yeah, it just makes for a really interesting dynamic. So we're just trying to understand it and figure out how to navigate it, and trying to understand why, when we have so many compromise channels, does it seem like we're here to learn something from each other? We're not even quite sure what it is we're here to learn from each other.
How many centers in your connection chart are defined and how many are undefined?
So she has, well, we have work to do as a theme.
Okay, so yeah, so there you have it in one sense. I mean, Ra would say,
yeah,
there's an instability, but there is still things to learn. And also
right.
Remember, in any compromised channel, you have one gate that just says, I feel like you feel, I know what you are. You know, there is that recognition of the gate you have in common.
So it kind of keeps that relationship going, that channel of curiosity.
That too, but it also can be the compromises, you know, and there is something
to
stop fighting about there too for the person that's compromised in a way. Like I believe that at the end of the day, you can have any kind of connection thing with somebody, and even when it comes to sexuality, just because you have the channel of 31, 30, 41, it doesn't mean that it's just that kind of way of having sex, for example.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting because there is intimacy that like comes and goes.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's not there, it's like really not there. Like I've never experienced anything like this where it's just completely not there or it's there. And
so one curiosity with that channel that can be applied to life or sexuality, do you feel that the person that has the 11 comes with the ideas and the 56 says, okay, let's act on it? Or does it feel like it doesn't matter?
I'm the 11. Yeah. And yeah, it's interesting because I can see that ideally I can see what that channel is here to do, like when you have it with someone else. And sometimes it works out fine. Other times it doesn't. And of course it's probably just due to the, not self, it just gets in the way, just things come up. But yeah, it seems like a whole lot of energy and no idea where to put it. So it's just kind of dredging up all of this unconscious shadow material to sort through. And it just seems almost endless. It's been going on for like 3 years now. Just seems like it's never going to end. I mean, we do get along better than we ever used to. And there's more of a understanding towards one another. But as far as like having a healthy relationship to sexuality together, it doesn't really feel like that's ever going to happen because it seems like because she is 10 years older than me, she's like so much wiser than me in a particular area. That's probably why both of us keep trying to break up, because it's like, whoa, this seems almost like unfair. Like it's hard not to feel inferior to someone who's 10 years older than you know? And of course, at the same time, my sacral says, uh-huh. And so that's why I'm here, and I've brought that to her attention many times where, we'll have challenges and then I'll say, okay, but ask me if I like you, ask me if I want to be with you, and I'll just have her ask me 3 or 4 times, and I'll just keep getting, uh-huh. So, and then I'll ask her and she'll get an uh-huh too. So, we do eventually return to that place of just being like, okay, but what's the core truth here, but it is it's quite a learning experience, I'll just say that. Yeah.
Thank you, Elliot. I would love to hear if there is any input from people on the call, because so many people are wise, both when it comes to relationship and human design. So I feel like there might be some input or just some experience that is tying into yours. Jennifer, did you have anything that ties into Elliot?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, past experiences, intimate experiences with men younger than myself. In that intimacy, when the two or more are there, just enjoy it. Don't doubt it. As soon as there's doubt in it, it has a potential to taint it instead of just the purity of that exchange of intimacy between the two of you.
Yeah, that feels possible at times. But do you think that her having the gate of doubt and me having an open crown has anything to do with doubt entering into it?
So thank you for the question. I have sacral authority. I'm going to say no. And the reason why I'm saying no is because you're thinking about, well, is this connection correct? Like the dynamics of it, instead of witnessing in that moment.
Right. Yeah.
The beautiful of the intimacy that's being exchanged at that time. And do you doubt it when you are in that act?
Right. That's like, no, you don't. Yeah, you're right. You don't. That's the key right there. Yeah.
If you're putting doubt while in the before play, so I'm going to say the before foreplay, the the action and
Yeah.
then the aftercare or the afterplay, if there's no doubt in there, like, don't interject, or if there's a way to just embrace and love that moment for what it is.
Well, what you said there was super key, which was just look and see if in the midst of that intimacy, if there is any doubt. And it's like, oh no, there isn't. You know, it's only before and after when it feels foreign or it feels like something I never experienced before. Because it's like a feeling like, is there ever going to be any intimacy? Why does it feel so like lukewarm? Why does it feel so cold? And then like, I don't know how to deal with that. I don't know how to deal with that. So I just want to end it.
Is there a possibility? Because I love my open head and my open ajna.
Mhm.
What was I gonna?
I love what you're sharing though. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. It's just there's what I'm feeling is there's the full embodiment of the being intimate with someone, and then if you can take away like the genital to genital intimacy, and then while being intimate, say while eating, intimate while playing a game. Like there's different types of intimacy. It's not all intimacy is genital to genital.
Oh, I'm definitely not that type of person who would even think that. In fact, I would say that my resistance to the
And not
physical,
all intimacy is sexual.
that's exactly what I've always lived with the awareness of my whole life. It's just that this relationship seems to bring up anything that believes that it is. So it's really strange. It's like I'm such a romantic. I'm such a person who's sapiosexual and loves to connect over, you know, concepts and things. And
Absolutely.
it feels like this relationship is driving towards anything that isn't that. It's like bringing up all the shadow material around that. And it's like it's I feel inundated. Like it's just like no wonder I want to end it. Like no wonder I keep trying to do things to sabotage it because I just it's too it feels like too much. It's just it's
So for
just
the sapiosexual part of your beingness, do
yeah.
you get the sapio from somewhere else that's not sexual?
Oh,
Why
for
are you
sure. Yeah,
asking?
absolutely.
Okay. So maybe that's not part of your relationship with that person.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, that's I mean when I'm around her I just find myself sharing a lot because we have work to do, you know. It's yeah, and then with her open ajna, I think she's just a lot more quiet than I am. And she also has the gate of listening in her G center, and that's the only gate she has. So she has an undefined G center with the gate of listening, which is also I learned from Karen Curry. The theme of that one is like I am powerful is the affirmation for it. So it's kind of like this very stable sort of energy that's just kind of holding space, and it feels like, oh, this is a person who I can just share with. But it's kind of it becomes like, oh, so overwhelming sometimes. I'll just keep talking and I'm like, why am I talking so much? Oh my god, I gotta like
Did
really
she
pull it
ask
back.
you to be quiet?
She's not a very direct person.
But did she ask you to be quiet?
Oh, I see what you're
Did she
saying.
ask you to stop talking? Did
She
she
has
ask you to
before, and
stop?
when she yeah, she has before, and when she does, then I honor that. Yeah. Okay. So,
So yeah, I definitely see the dynamic in that feeling of inferiority, especially with a man, like you say, that kind of the dynamic of just wanting to end it or wanting to sabotage it. I think that's like a dynamic that's kind of universal and it doesn't even depend on the body graph. John, I saw that you were nodding a lot of times, so I wonder what's moving in your world.
I'm just there are several things that popped up while Elliot was sharing about, while you were sharing about your experience. And one of the things has to do with the potential for intimacy that exists between any two energetic charts. Like any two people who are living could literally have an intimate relationship if they both choose to. And at the same time, I have the 29 and the 30. So I have, from the human design perspective, I'm not quite as, I'm a little bit clearer on the gene keys languaging, but that 29 shows up in that tantric channel with the 46. I don't have the 46, but the programming partner, the 30, can be very problematic in a relationship experience, because the sort of inner drive of desire is kind of naturally brought up in that physical relationship to a romantic partner. We are driven kind of inherently to desire itself. And when we look at it from kind of like the human design mechanical perspective, a lot of times I notice that element of that sort of emotional driving desire it's really hard to connect with when we're looking at, oh, well, this channel does this and that channel does that, and man, I feel all these things that don't feel the way I want them to feel. And why is that? And what it brings me to is, like, when you said, you know, all these things happen between us in relationship that aren't, you know, like I keep wanting to sabotage or end it, or it doesn't feel quite right or whatever. And then you end up being drawn back into it despite those challenges. You know, you said it's ongoing for 3 years despite these kind of dynamics happening. The thought that came into my mind was like, of human design, which is that we end up with these sort of karmic requirements from our energetic natures that we have to move through a cycle to completion before we can move on to the next exploration of whatever that cycle might be. And I find that the more I connect with human design, the more I get sort of out of my own way, the more that I notice, like, that dynamic was really driving things. You know, it's like, oh, well, is the cycle finished yet? And when I look at my sacral, I'm like, you know, and I'm like, oh, that's why it's still happening, because I haven't come to a natural completion of an exploration of the way these energies are coming together in my experience of intimacy. And that's why it's like, there's more work to do. There's more to learn. There's more, no matter how many compromise channels we may have, or how our personalities kind of clash here and there, or things don't look logical. It really, I mean, it just opened, I feel like it opens up this whole just possibility for any number of different ways of relating in intimacy. And you know, people are experimenting with polyamory. Some people are staying very strong with monogamy. There's just so many things happening in the collective in terms of what we might be coming to. And Bella, that image of the intimacy of the future with the tantric channels, like, really, like, kind of like put me on that, oh man, we're doing relationships so different than it's been done in previous generations. It's really interesting to explore. So I don't know, that's what I had on my mind.
John, that was like super helpful to hear, because it's like beyond an answer, it's like even clearer than anything that could be like a solution. It's just like more acceptance of the, I guess you could call like the energetic or human condition. I do find that that's usually the answer. There's a system that I have learned more about called Three Principles, and it just keeps going back to like mind, consciousness, and thought, which drops you down into wisdom. And then it's like, oh yeah, you just need to like have love and understanding for the human condition. And then things start to really unfold in a much more gentle and beautiful way. So you kind of brought me back to the awareness of that. Thank you.
Your experience is such a reflection of relationship that I've been experiencing for quite some time. That sort of tendency to doubt, is this the right choice? And the questioning of like, but I don't feel the way I'm supposed to feel in this intimate relationship a lot of the time. And it's like, am I actually getting the experience that I deserve? Blah, blah, blah. And yet it's always present. And when I drop into that authority, it's like always like, yeah, I'm going to keep doing this.
I know. It's so wild how that is like that. Yeah. Because I am looking at how things look. And sorry if I interrupted you, by the way. I was looking at how things look and I'm like, oh, this is really unconventional. But I keep, checking in with my gut response. And there'd be this really powerful moments of just feeling like everything's in alignment. I'll get, a lot of reflections, songs saying words, like filling in sentences for me and stuff like that. There's no way that stuff could be happening. And I would be in the wrong place with the wrong person at the wrong time. It's like not even possible. So, yeah.
Elliot, two things. I think you said in the chat that both you and her are the cross of penetration, which would be the 51 and the 57, the 54 and the 53. So here in the beginning, we said there's only one connection channel, but the fact that you're sharing the same purpose in a way, the same costume to walk through this life, and that is super powerful in its different dynamics. And I also what you're saying, I feel this is very helpful when we're mixing in the Gene Key and the human design community, because this gut response is something that in the Gene Keys we don't really speak about. We're like, oh, I felt it in my heart, or like, not that that's bad, but there is something too with intuition and heart that when the mind starts to doubt it, then we don't even know if it's intuition or heart. But this thing with like the questions where we can say yes or no till, and we can feel if our body goes towards it, it's super powerful. And just to give a little bit of an example, when I was in that relationship with somebody for over a year at least, and it continued to be, and people were like, well, but if he's immature and 6 years younger, and even if he has a lot of potential, even if you've done so much beautiful things and traveled the world together, like why? And I kept checking in and I'm like, yes. But then what happened was that at some point I didn't want to go to the places that that was the relationship. We were traveling the world and we're meeting in different places. And at some point I didn't want to go anymore. And then again, learning about my sacral response, I'm a sacral generator. Like then I knew. Then it was nothing more to learn at that point, at least. And I think that he's coming into part of his maturity too, because I remember he reaching out when you could start to travel again after the pandemic. And he's like, I can't stop thinking about you. And this is, this is all the work that I've done in these 3 years. And thank you. Because kind of, again, I'm older and he going out in the world and learning the things. And then he actually was also thinking back to the fact, like he was feeling into the fact that it's not now, maybe it's in the future, but he's like, he was checking in with himself and he's like, I still feel all this for you, but I know when I check in, it's not now. So I'm in Mexico, but I'm not going to come to Miami and see you. And, so like, there's just something so valuable, and you bring that to this call where we are a little bit more maybe weighing on Gene Keys and relying on human design to underpin it, but you coming in kind of as pure and just saying, my gut response. It's just super helpful and helping me to think back those times my body told me and I was listening. Thank you.
Yeah, and if there was no fulfillment and if there was no clarity coming through, of course I would be, you know, pausing and like, okay, should I head in this direction? And then if, you know, I got a I definitely would do that. There are definitely some bumps in the road, ones that I've never really experienced before, but they do always eventually come to clarity. I realize, oh, I was, you know, projecting fear in this area where it wasn't even real, and, you know, whatever. And then all of a sudden my body feels comfortable again. So I do go through moments where the body, you know, responds in a way where there's some discomfort, but it does usually always come back to equilibrium. It's about allowing it to go through that process. And I think that's probably one of the more challenging things. But, you know, Karen Curry, once again, she called the manifesting generator, which is what I am, the time bender. And I think I have to look at things from a perspective of, if I allow it to go through that process and I allow those pivots to happen, then I can pretty much rest assured that I will end up in a place of more fulfillment, of more ahas, and more opportunity to respond for what's correct for me. Because I've had over the years confirmation after confirmation, you know, times where I didn't have anything, and then somebody would just walk up to me and be like, hey, I want to buy you some food, or, you know what I mean? Like, just things that are like out of this world, where it felt like life was kind of fake, almost like a simulation. Everything just worked perfectly. And then you hit a bump, and because there's another level of growth and, you know, evolution in consciousness that takes place. So I don't want to take up this whole call, but thank you so much for everything that you shared, really.
Okay, so does anybody want to take a left turn, or do you want to continue to weave? Where are we taken, and by whom are we taken? Joe, I don't know, but I just really feel you in your beautiful way today as well, from one intimate call to another possibility to connect.
Yeah, thank you, Bella. I have opened Agnya too, and you have Agnya, maybe you've read it. I wanted to bring in a little bit of what was going on. There are different levels of intimacy, which Jennifer was speaking to, right? Like spiritual intimacy, emotional intimacy, intellectual intimacy, even in intellectuality too, at different aspects of intellectual intimacy. So, and then I, like, when you brought up the whole channels, the top two, I have the mating and the marriage, like top two, and then the rest, I have all hanging gates. And I have often seen myself, I'm going to share something here. I'm guilty of it. I'm blushing as I'm saying it. But most of my collaborators actually say that my way is to romance with them. Like, I flirt in the way of collaborate. And this is highly sapiosexual. Like, there is no sexuality, but like there is sensuality and sexuality too, like any age group, right? And I have all of those hanging gates, and once I've seen that, I'm like, oh my god, this is what is happening. Everybody wants to romance with me. I want to romance with life. I want to romance with work. That's my approach has been, and that's how I've been attracting my collaborators, is like just having this I want to say extreme sensuality or sexuality, whatever you want to call it, right? So I understand where Elliot is coming from. Like, that doubt sets in, is like, what do they want from me? Like, all I want is a collaboration, a project, right? But just by way of like that invitation for them to like my collaborators, whatever age, gender, whatever, within like 2 or 3 calls, they're already telling me I love you. And I'm like, okay, please stop. I mean, I'm not saying like that, but like just that experience of, so that's what I've been thinking about. Even when I saw the call, it was like intimacy and human design. And I was like, okay, let us talk about some of these Yeah, it's work. It's serious corporate trauma, like serious work, but we end up falling in love with each other. And that's beautiful for somebody who's not experienced love as a child and as a grown-up, like I get from all of these work relationships. So that's what I've like Jennifer, you and Elliot have ignited in me. It's like, oh my God, sapiosexual, yet it is very intimate. We've cried together, we've done serious work before we offer it to the world. So I say there are different levels of intimacy. I have not let a man touch me for over 4.5 years now, and it's a conscious decision because I wanted to work on my healing before I let anybody in my aura and share my energy with anybody. So that's deeply deeply personal information, but any insights are welcome. Thank you.
A little bit of reflections, and when it comes to you, I would say there is also a frequency. And on the other call, we were speaking about innocence and creating those spaces, safe spaces to house innocence or to celebrate transparency. So when we come from a place of open-heartedness and a kind of sweetness, we are creating that with the other. And it is like a falling in love, whether that's in a childish way of just, you never experience that. And then people lean in. So I feel like that's very much part of it. And, there is something in you too with that feminine archetype, whether you have any gene keys or human design gates, it's that feminine that the world is longing for, which is very different from the immature feminine or the feminine that's masculinized. So when you just show up in that, you are going to mirror love, because that's the embrace of the feminine. I recognize that because in my case, I have the feminine as my life's work, and I have it in a fourth line. So it's the heart, and it's very different to have it, I think, in a fourth line and a first line, because I know other two in life's work or purpose, and the first line is different. It's not that inviting from this space. But for me, that discernment has also been super important. What do you do with that when you know that that's the mirror, in a way, the reflection that you provide for the other, something they have never experienced. And before you become aware of that, and before you're stable in that, the possible misunderstandings that can happen from that. And Elliot was mentioning before the 13, also what I feel with you too, you have an enormous listening ability. So people feel heard and seen by you. And then, of course, how can we not love that, to be heard, to be received? Of course, as human beings, there's something we recognize in that the inner child came to this world for and maybe never felt. And then you provide opportunity to get a taste, to get a sense of that. And that's partly too why I feel like you and I are resonating on many planes, where that's part of it. But we also have this intellectual, we're like really fast and intelligent at the same time, so that's like, we have so many planes that we can resonate and love each other from and connect from. Yeah. And I think this is beautiful, because here right now we are just showing how two women can appreciate and love and be fascinated, and I see your beauty, I see your sensuality. Like there is this deep acknowledgement of you, but also of me seeing parts of myself in you, different cultures, different everything. And still I feel so home. And this is what we can start to also role model for the world, and dare to say, you're attractive, Joe, in so many ways to me.
Yeah, thank you. And Bella, same to you too. It's like I feel like I'm attracted to every human being because there is such beauty in the rawness and in all of that. Yeah, so thank you so much. Thank you.
I wanted to just reflect, Joe, just the part that you brought up about all your little dangly energy parts that make people comment, "Oh, Joe, you're so wonderful. I just love you." And I feel like I don't know that I have a clear, I don't feel a clear connection to some wisdom that I could draw up from the bottom of the well around how this functions in us, only to say that kind of inner desire gets really pulled on, really tugged on, like really drawn out of us by those types of connections. And you know, like what Elliot was bringing up, he's like, oh, we only have like one electromagnetic channel, and everything else is a compromised channel, and it's like I feel like the way that the geometry of our designs and the way that they kind of flow together is going to have different impacts on different people where they are on their path of exploring themselves. And I think the trick that I've been looking at is, how do I experience how others come to me as a reflection, not of what I am, but of how I'm interacting with them. And that to me, like, that to me is where there's like lots of good juiciness, because oftentimes, like, it's so easy to get trapped in somebody like being our reflection, and then us just kind of like, well, that's what I am, this is terrible, I hate it. You know, and once we like flip it into, oh, how am I being, like when you share about that, Joe, about, oh, all these people just come to me and say how adorable or lovely or sensual or whatever all those descriptors are that are coming your way, to me that just says like, yeah, Joe, keep living in your own like life, you know, juice of life, you know, like you're doing the thing that's like really awesome when you're bringing that energy out. And it's like I don't know if you have the 15 anywhere, but that's another one of those tantric channels that you have the 5. Yeah. It has the magnetism part of it, and because you're sticking with your own rhythm and doing your own thing, you might be drawing people who are like, oh, I want to feel that magnetism, you know? So it's such an interesting contemplation. I feel like any chance we have to experience it with a partner or with an acquaintance or strangers even, it's just, I don't know, it's amazing. It's an amazing process. So thanks for sharing that, because it like, you know, I don't know, it pulled me into like feeling those connections and like how that reflection can be useful for me.
Yeah, today I feel like we're diving into charts, connections, and a little bit more of that personal, intimate sharing of, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what I'm dealing with in a relationship. Oh, I resonate with you. Yes, I can see that. So this is when I write in the description of this call, this informal sharing discussion, is because I love us to actually come close. And that's the beauty of also having a small container. So let's see if there is one more share. Anything else before we wrap up for today? Maybe somebody we haven't heard, or
I'd like to share.
Mhm.
So I have a lot of, like, I have the 214, I have 2.4 in my evolution, and I have the 5 in my Uranus. And intimacy is it's one that comes to me a lot in my dreams and things that I'm working through. And kind of hearing your guys' descriptions of these channels and like how they're very magnetic and very like, oh, hey, you know, it makes sense why I would shut it down, you know, and just be like, oh, shit, no. Because I think it's maybe like poor integrity of like self, or like that concept of self. Like I wasn't able to like differentiate, and like, so I would feel like the pleasurable sensations potentially, but also like the disgust with it. And so then it became like a really entangled, meshy, like just like a really messy, it's just messy. And so it was probably easier just to shut down all of this instead of trying to, because I'll notice like usually people are very like instantly attracted, but then and eventually like the relationship fizzles and dies out. And I'm like, what happened? Like we had like such a connection, right? But then but I think I'm shedding myself off because I'm afraid of going deeper and deeper, and then I'm like, nope, I'm good. I think that's about as far as I want to go. So on to the next one. You know, and it not I don't mean that in a mean way. I think I do it very subconsciously. I don't do it intentionally. I'm usually kind of confused at like what happened, or I'm like, what did I do? I don't know what I did to like shut it down. So I just wanted to bring that in as kind of like a reflection of, you know, somebody who's still kind of in that space where I can feel that I've opened up more, and I'm experiencing more opportunity, you know, that I would have never thought would happen, kind of thing. But I can still feel like the compression of like, I don't, you know, maybe not. So thank you.
Thank you, Larissa. With that, I feel like you're opening up also to like a whole new discussion, and where we could go much deeper. And I know that we've probably all been at these thresholds, and that we still have those thresholds in our lives. And definitely in a way, let's not go to the next one. Like, let's also see if we can come back to this and like also honor that place, and that this is like a lifelong thing. And so many people never even, you know, dare to acknowledge for themselves and make the other person wrong, or, you know, whatever it might be. Yeah. So is there any response to that? Deborah, do you have anything that you want to say into the group, or?
I was resonating with that. There have been so many things that have been shared within this container today that have really touched me, and so many that I can't really straighten them all out to say anything. But what I can say is that I have not been in an intimate relationship in person in real life since just after I started with my experiment with human design and gene keys. And I came out of an abusive, physically and emotionally abusive marriage relationship. And I have shut everybody out for years. And even when I first started allowing myself to be seen on a camera online, that was very scary. And I didn't speak for a long time. So being intimate as I am able to be with you all is a part of my healing journey. And I'm grateful, very grateful. So thank you. And we'll see what happens next.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I have been on very much of a journey today. First, I started a journey of 12 months with intimacy in a way with the astrological signs with Ashley. So we went into Aquarius season and just kind of gave it all there in a new journey. And then we were closing a journey of 34 calls with the Venus process in a group of between 20 and 30 people. And then I jumped right on here into this intimate discussion, and I have 2 calls left today, and one starts in 7 minutes. So I'm going to take 5 minutes to be intimate with this before I change my gears and I go somewhere else. So thank you for being part of the weaving, being part of my day, of the beginnings and the endings and everything in between. So grateful for this conversation and for all of you here. And I see you next week. Bye. Thank you.